Start with an opening statement. You have a couple of minutes if you'd like, or we can go right into questions, whatever you prefer.
Great. No, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. JP Progressives, Melissa Rubin, thanks for putting this forum together. I'm so happy that I'm able to direct myself to the group as well as to everyone in the community today. You know, the environment that we're in right now and that we've been in this past session was probably the most challenging, but it's also probably the most productive session we've had in over 30 years. This session, we took on issues that hadn't been touched for over 30 years. Issues relative to pensions, issues relative to ethics, to transportation reform. You know, those three categories specifically, those are things that hadn't been touched and forgotten for a long time. I've also had great successes also in initiatives that have been in the standstill for years as well. Issues around core reform that the governor signed just a few weeks ago. I remember when I first came into office, so many of us had been trying to work on this issue, at the community level, the grassroots level, trying to get this done. And finally, it got signed the other day. Not only that, I've staked myself on the issue of affordable housing from the beginning. From this project that we're here today to the Blessed Sacrament project that you've seen that's gone up. Not only that, the work that I've done in and around Jackson Square, we've been able to do that because we've been able to refund the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, and we've been able to find other sources of other resources so that we can build the housing in this community that says we want more affordable housing. I've also had the opportunity to work on youth issues that are very close to my heart. The education reform bill that we just recently passed that will address the achievement gap. All of us, I'm a product of the Boston Public School System myself, and I felt that I needed to spend a lot of time on this. It's something that I've been working on since I came into office back in 2003, and we finally passed the second part of education reform at too late. In terms of, I also spend a lot of time on public health and healthcare reform issues. We've signed a school nutrition bill and a prescription drug monitoring program. And folks, these are just a few things that we've done in this session that I feel very proud about and that I look forward to talking to you about in the upcoming minutes.
Great, thank you. Our first question is going to be on the budget. You're going to hear this theme a lot because it's an area that affects every other program we care about. As a state representative, you're aware of the pretty serious situation we're facing next year. On top of the cuts we've already had, we're facing possibly dwindling stimulus dollars, and there are some budget analysts that predict the structural deficit could be upwards of $2 billion next year. So our question is very simple. If you got to write the budget yourself, where would we get the money? We have a list of options here. Any range of tax increases, fees, eliminating tax credits. Also we have a list of cuts: local aid, education, social safety net, infrastructure, etc. You get to write the budget. How do we do it next year?
Well, relative to the budget, the way that we go about the budget is the same way that all of us go about our monthly budgets in our home. We know that annually we make a certain amount, and we know that monthly, a certain amount comes in. Sometimes it's a little less, sometimes it's a little more. And we in the state house, we establish these revenue projections quarterly. So what we've been doing in these past budget sessions is essentially trying to fix this problem relative to the amount of revenues that haven't been coming in. And we've had to take an approach that has included some tax increases in certain places and cuts in another. When it comes to the budget itself, there is not one specific thing we can do. We can't tax our way out of this budget deficit, and we can't also cut our ways out. So we have to find ways on how to make the budget work better for everyone in the Commonwealth. We have to find opportunities for people so that we can try and build our economies and find how do we build on our strengths. And not only that, we also try to figure out how do we streamline, and that's what we did in this past budget, when we streamlined the transportation systems together. We got rid of the the Turnpike Authority. That was a big monolith that existed for a while, and we were able to reform that system. And I'm happy to say that I think during that time, we've been able to save, from what I hear, upwards of $200 million just in that change alone. I think that those are the kinds of things that we need to do. We also invested in life sciences in the previous session, where we built and supported our existing public higher education infrastructure. We put over $500 million in that bill to look at our infrastructure for in our higher education, so that we can build our greatest strength, which is in the life sciences. So I think it's a mix of the two, looking at what revenues can we generate. I myself sponsored a tax on sodas and candies, so that we can try and fill in some of the holes around public health. But I feel there has to be a mix of it. There has to be some revenues, there has to be some cuts, and efficiencies, as well as growing the economy.
Are there, other than the tax on sodas and candies, are there other revenue sources you would consider and similar with cuts?
Yeah, I think that's the one that comes to mind. The list that you folks had, at any given time, we've made votes on those. I supported the increase to the cigarette tax. I supported the increase to the alcohol tax. I supported again, the piece to relative to candy and soda. But I wish we could just take one single vote on the income tax, because it's spread out more evenly towards the entire population. But in the State House, when you talk about raising taxes, and I've said this in the past, it's literally like chopping off an arm. People, while we can talk about it here in our community and have a debate on it, an educated debate, unfortunately in other parts of the state, that's all they want to do is raise taxes. That's all they want to do is raise taxes. And it's seen as this horrible thing. Whereas in this community, we're open to looking at different things, and that's why I'm proud to represent this community, because I know I can bring a different perspective to the dialogue that we're having right now and in the past.
And we appreciate your willingness to talk about revenue, since now that it's our so. Okay, and then we move on to a second question. This is about the minimum wage. I just want to clarify your answer. So the question, would you support indexing the minimum wage to inflation? And would you support raising the minimum wage to a level closer to the actual living wage?
Right now, it's not an issue that's come to us as an issue. I've heard more about how do we make sure that we continue on the trajectory of what we've done relative to healthcare reform, so that we can make sure that it's wage but also benefits. In the Commonwealth, we have 97% of our population right now that is insured. Unheard of in all the rest of the states. While everybody else was dibbling and dabbling, we actually did it. We brought all the stakeholders together. So I feel like it's benefits, and it's also wages. But I don't know, I don't understand. I have to try and figure out myself, what is the impact that a minimum wage increase would have to the entire system. Not only that, I feel that we have to try and make sure that, again, we build the economy, and we try and make sure that the wages that we do have, that they're rising along with the number of jobs in our community as well.
So willing to consider but not sure yet? Does that seem like a fair characterization?
No, I'd say, again, I'm open to everything, but I'm not going to say definitively yes or no on that.
Okay, third question, education reform. In your answer to the question here, you talked a lot about some of the amendments you got passed, particularly relative to English language learners, and we appreciate that because it's a big issue in this community.
For me, it is the issue. How do we address the achievement gap? And that's what the recent bill that we did relative to education reform is about.
So that's a question. I couldn't actually tell if you voted yes or no, and we wanted to know yes or no.
Absolutely. Not only did I vote yes, I took an active part in that bill. There were when we write laws, folks, we like general terms. For some reason, we like these general terms when we're telling departments and agencies on how to conduct, on how they should conduct the directive under the law. In this particular bill, we were able to actually spell out what the education department and what school districts need to do in teaching English language learners. There's a lot of rhetoric, and there's been a lot of rhetoric on this issue, and as a product of the Boston Public Schools, there have been a lot of kids that have failed in this system. And I saw it myself as a student in the system. And when I hear kids in my community talk about the things that go on in the classroom, as well as the things that don't go on in the communities, I feel like we have to make sure that we define. And that's what I did in terms of my work relative to this bill. I, myself, wasn't a supporter of charter schools. So I made sure that I was able to talk to everyone in leadership, the chair of the education committee, and try and make sure that they understood that whatever we did, we had to make sure that we have input from the community, input from teachers, but primarily input from families. I have 2 daughters. One is 4 years old, and my other one is 2 years old. I have to try and make sure that I try and build a system for them. Right now we have to make sure that we utilize the resources that we have, and we've been successful with that bill. Right now, we've been successful with the bill that we passed, so much so that the federal government, President Obama, has designated Massachusetts one of the states to receive those Race to the Top dollars, which could mean an additional $250 million or more into our education system. We're going to be looking, in this district alone, we had upwards of 4 to 6 schools that were considered underperforming schools. I took that very seriously because where I look at where these schools are at, they're right here. They're literally steps away from here. And it's also the areas where we are having the greatest challenges in this community. We've had great strides in this community relative to a bunch of different issues. But at the same time, we have to try and, the population that's in these schools right now, they have to feel like this is their way out of poverty. You know, I grew up in Mission, Maine. We were poor. We lived in a broken down housing development that nobody cared about. And my mother fought for rights. And she made sure that the housing authority and the federal government didn't walk away, because they wanted to walk away. And that's what we have to make sure, is that we engage parents and we engage stakeholders in a way that they're adding and they're keeping our feet to the fire on making sure that we're specific about how we are going to change the system.
The question is about women's right to choose. Roe v. Wade is settled law, and I'm pretty happy about that. I can't speak for everyone in the room, but I would imagine so we all are. Most of the debate and battle around abortion rights these days are on access. So you see a lot of states either proposing or actually passing laws to restrict a woman's access.
Not Massachusetts.
It's true proposing, though. One is a 24-hour
as you will see, nothing has gone on here in Massachusetts. And I think that speaks to all of the work that we've all put into making sure that we protect a woman's right to choose. So, will I change? No.
Will you oppose any additional barriers?
I will oppose any barrier. I will oppose the barrier. And again, I think that Massachusetts is a strong state and will continue to be. I remember I've been in session where I've been in the legislature since 2003, and I've seen the number of initiatives in and around the issue of marriage rights and some of the groups that were working against marriage rights. And it was, some of these issues would creep in, and it was pretty scary. It was pretty scary to hear some of the things that were going on at that time. So again, I'm clear on where I'm at.
That's great.